I hope you are still with us as we are starting the panel discussion, one of the most important and exciting part of this conference. The panel will be followed by the question and answers. You'll be able to ask questions to our speakers using chat box. Please let me invite to the panel Nigel Stroud from Heathrow Airport, Philip Jackson from BIM Institute, Reitis Bushmantis from Rail Baltica, Simon Ray from SPI, Malcolm Taylor from Crossrail International, and next to me, Piotr Dudek from Association of Polish Engineers in Great Britain. Gentlemen, not to extend the introduction, I will start the discussion, and my first question will concern the airport component. Heathrow is one of the biggest European airports with a long history and extensive digitalization and BIM methodology experience. Nigel, can you advise the other investors and share several key points they should focus on when making a new investment?
Do you want to repeat that question, because you went quiet during the...
Just missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to hear, I'm afraid.
Nigel? Nigel, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can't hear that.
I can't hear them.
We've got some technical issues. You can't hear us.
Technology.
Let's go to the next question.
Nigel, can you hear us? If not, we can jump to the next question. Okay.
Can you hear us okay?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, all of you.
Okay.
I think.
Right.
Ask your question again.
So I just start straight into the answer?
Can you, Nigel, questions to Nigel, can you advise the other investors and share several key points they should focus on when making new investments?
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think it's becoming the norm that digitisation and BIM approaches through design and build process. But the client needs to really look at the value that they get throughout that process. And quite often our designers and contractors benefit from some of those efficiencies. And I think it's something that we as a client, and it's something that we are doing, is actually looking at how we can actually get some of that value passed on. But then if you take a client through that part of the life cycle, there are many aspects that we can exploit, such as sustainability, carbon, health and safety, reduction in survey costs, looking at accurate cost, and of course asset maintenance. And it's really key that we monetize those particular benefits. And when we do that, we get our executive to prioritize those areas. And I think if you can focus on a number of key areas where you're actually getting some real benefits out of those efficiencies, you can then start to see the return in value. As I say, we've started to really evaluate a number of these areas where we've started to add cost, where we'll get that value out of those different parts of the process. And the way that we then do that is then to start to realise that benefit. So I think, if you take Heathrow as an example, we've had a different set of priorities depending on where we are. So if we look at the beginning of our year, we were in an expanding business. We were building a new runway. So our priorities on digitisation was very much based on expansion. We're now in a kind of a COVID situation where we're actually looking at building up our business. And what we've done is actually focus our digitisation activities on that current business activity. And I think that's really key for a client and owner-operator, is to really focus on those key benefits.
Well, Specialist Project Integration is an expert in BIM and the integration of various projects. We know SPI has implemented a project control system for Heathrow. Simon, can you share some more details about the implemented solution?
Yeah, sure. We've supported a few projects at Heathrow. At Terminal 3, we created a solution to integrate all the contractors' activities. The structure there is they have integrated design partners, and as you can imagine, in somewhere that size, there are lots of different contractors working on lots of different parts of the operational asset. And we were brought in to help integrate all these contractors and their activities and to understand the operational impact of that. I heard a story that at some point they'd managed to close quite a lot of the toilets between the gates and passport control because works weren't coordinated. So as a result of that, they were looking at a way of being able to visualize effectively an integrated program, but without being integrated because they had no contractual relationship with each other. So we created a solution that brought all the BIM models together from all the different designers and contractors. And then we used games engine technology to carry out a 4D analysis. And what we wanted to do is have something that was really simple commercially to allow them to access this data. We created a 4D tool that allowed them to just work inside a Smartsheet spreadsheet. They could change the dates in that spreadsheet and it visualized the model straight away without any planners or any going through other people's software. And then on another project, we supported the contractor to deliver a multidisciplinary project. And that was really focused on project controls and using the BIM data to review the design, but then the command center to collect all that data and instantly report on progress from site. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is we have a lot of data. It's spread out, it's not connected, people don't really trust it. And then we end up putting more people on these projects. So the ambition there was to rationalize the project team and get it back on budget.
Thank you. Piotr, you spent the last 15 years working with BIM in the UK on various infrastructure projects like Heathrow and Crossley. You are known as a BIM advocate in Poland and Central Eastern Europe. Please let us know more about your mission and how I want you to materialize it.
Yeah, it's true. I'm trying to implement BIM everywhere. Any Polish or British market doesn't have any secrets for me, to be honest. But my story, I have to start from Association of Polish Engineers in Great Britain. In 2006, we decided to open Akademia Techniczna, academic institute, let's say. And together with this institute, we decided to create the project, which is calling BIM for Poland. And we're using that as a platform to share our knowledge from UK and send that knowledge, export the knowledge to Poland, to show some good practice and to show everyone how to implement the proper knowledge, BIM knowledge on the Polish market.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Philip, many experts say that you have been part of BIM growth and its popularization in the UK. What is your recommendation for the countries that take the first steps in the implementation of BIM?
You know, I've pondered this question long and hard many times because we've learned many lessons over the years since we've been looking at implementing BIM in the UK. And I think that the first lesson that actually we learned or have learned is actually it depends upon who you are as to what the information means. So if you're a contractor and you want to coordinate things, brilliant. If you're a designer and you want to make sure you don't get any clashes, then it's good. But actually what we understood was that the whole thing is a process of gathering information. We need to understand who needs what information and when that information is there. So if you want recommendations, then look at the lessons that we learned, and actually many of those have been embedded in the ISO 19650 standards, which is a process for BIM, and I think they're really core. But I think the other thing we learned was that we did gain advantage by starting to mandate the use of BIM on contracts that were government owned. And then to support those contracts with developing the right information standards to be able to deliver that, and that has gradually evolved into actually the industry being able to pick up what needs to be done. And the UK BIM Alliance has now taken on with the industry and with government to actually develop all the necessary tools and things that need to be done. So there is value in a mandate from government to use a BIM approach to delivering new assets and updating assets. But there's also to be able to push that to the industry so that they can actually respond and give them the right tools to do that. So I think we have learned many lessons. I'm looking at many faces that I know on these screens, by the way, and those lessons have been that we need to evolve, but actually start with a simple understanding of who needs what information, and to be able to make sure that we ask for that information, which I think I'll put across in my presentation. Hopefully that helps, but there is no easy way, but the concern I always have is that one part of the world gets excited, like the design guys get excited in using BIM modelling rather than information modelling. Okay?
Yeah. Nigel again. As I know, Heathrow started implementing BIM many years ago, before BIM was obligatory in Great Britain. Why have you chosen this path, Nigel?
Yeah, so I guess for us, it's not a question of to BIM or not to BIM. We're a privately run airport, and we've got many stakeholders that we manage. And when we make our new capital investments, we've got a lot of commitments to those stakeholders, and it's stakeholders such as airlines and our shareholders. And it's quite a complex set of shareholders. If I sort of go back, one project in particular that kind of was the turning point for us at Heathrow, and the kind of realisation that the journey that the path that we took was our Terminal 5 project, which was quite a large project. It was based on a fixed cost and had a fixed opening time. And again, there was a lot of commitment that we had to make to our stakeholders. And I think the realisation there was that there was over 500,000 maintainable assets to be delivered. And for us to kind of meet those commitments, we had to really look at how we, one, build better, but also from an information management point of view, look at the digital approach so that we could get the information about the assets in a really efficient process. So I think for us, it enabled us to actually start to set up our data structures, our requirements, and our systems, and started to embed that into our requirements and our contracts. And I think as an owner, we kind of ran that project from that kind of digital way of working, but then we captured those lessons learned and turned that into a business as usual way of working as an owner, so that we then started to run all our projects. And I guess we've got the gift to do that. We are an owner operator, and we've got many projects, so we are able to turn a project then into learning. And I think we learn from one project to another.
Thank you. Let's move to the railway component. Malcolm and Righties will smile now. Crossrail. Crossrail is known as an extremely complex project, many kilometers of tunnels and rail lines crossing so busy London. We imagine that it has been an enormous challenge to start it. Malcolm, could you share some of your findings with us and reveal several key points that should be considered from the initial phase?
Sure, absolutely. I'll probably follow a little bit of a theme that both Nigel and Phil have actually talked about. I think these large projects, most projects require a large number of teams and contracts, and particularly these sorts of projects over long periods of time. So probably the key things for me would be, from a data perspective, that you really need to define your requirements early and really quite precisely, so that everybody knows what's wanted, so that data, for example, is consistent, accurate, timely, and also defining where you're going to put it, that common data environment, and get those requirements into the contract documents. And that's really the kind of leads me to the second key thing for me, is that on these longer duration projects is how things can change, and certainly in a sort of technology related to data and information. So you need to have contracts that can actually flex and take advantage of all of these new ideas. And so your procurement form is quite critical to be able to exploit those, because as I think I mentioned in my presentation, when I started at Crossrail 10, 11 years ago, things like tablets didn't exist, Wi-Fi in stations, there was never a requirement. And those are expectations that our ultimate end users want. And so contractually, you need to be able to bring those type of things on board as well. So there's a thing there about defining requirements and being contractually flexible.
Well, Rail Baltica. Rail Baltica is described as the first mega project in the Baltic region. Quoting a Lithuanian contracting body, it is the first fully life cycle BIM project. Your company, Raitis, was in charge of common BIM strategy preparation for the project. Can you describe how accomplished this?
Yes, well, first of all, that was a strategic decision by the company. And we, as a public client, we made this decision that we want to, or we mandate to go this approach, and we mandate this approach from all of our suppliers. Is it a designer? Is it a contractor later down the pipe? But that is what we demand. And so our BIM journey, if we call it that way, started, let's say, late 2017, when we started with our framework, and we developed and understood what we actually want and need, what is the approach, what we want to take. That was followed by developing like more detailed strategy, and this strategy was then included as a requirement for the designers, later for the contractors as well, so that everyone would know the rules. Did we manage to do everything on the one go? No. We see that there are a lot of improvements needed, and we are working on that. And this strategy is not ready, and I think that we will continue to develop it throughout the process of design, construction, and our ultimate goal is the maintenance phase. And this is what we are aiming for, and this is what we want to achieve with structurizing the information, collecting the information throughout all of the phases of the project, starting from design, early design, and then going into more advanced design, then going into the construction, and later on compiling all of this information for maintenance purposes. So this has been our journey so far, but of course a lot of challenges still ahead. And as previous speakers mentioned, the technologies are changing, the approaches are changing, and it cannot be like a fixed done deal. We are continuing, and this is our aim for the whole life cycle of the project, to continue to develop our strategy and our approach.
Thank you. Simon, many say that the biggest challenge connected with the successful delivery of complex projects is design integration across many sectors. There are various considerable investments in BIM happening recently in our region. For example, just mentioned Rail Baltica or Solidarity Transportation Hub in Poland. Can you tell us how investors should integrate various types of infrastructure into one consistent system?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose integration's always been a weak link on projects. We have really talented engineers who do the work in their silos, but bringing it together has always been a challenge. And even in the UK, there's 100 years worth of reports and analysis of how we do things better. And we're on a journey to do that. From my perspective, we've spent years and years developing and refining processes and that integrate the engineers, the contractors, and the project managers. We typically act as the design manager and take responsibility for integrating all the engineers. And so as the design manager, we would act as the BIM manager and use those processes and technologies to mitigate risk. That includes, as Malcolm said, configuring and running the common data environment as a single source of truth, the federated model so that everything is integrated. And we've just developed processes over time that have made that really lean and really successful. So it's almost like the glue that's missing on projects historically. And even with the BIM requirements, it tells us what we want to get to, but not necessarily how we do it. And I think, that's the challenge that most projects face is integration. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. I think that no one knows all the challenges connected with the tunneling works than Crossrail does. Malcolm, what kind of innovations have you been implementing to conduct such a complex work efficiently?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think actually our biggest and best innovation was actually our innovation initiative and our innovation program itself. And the reason I say that is because it was out of that, and we called it Innovation 18, out of that program, we created an environment which would stimulate and encourage innovation. We got, initially it was first of all our key 10 contractors, each contributed £25,000, and Crossrail we put in £25,000, £250,000 to create a pool of £500,000. And then there was a team of supply chain and contractors and everybody separate from us as a client, creating that environment that stimulated people's thoughts and ideas to get people to realise that actually innovation was a good thing. And with I think about over 1,100 ideas, 100 or so of those were funded to put in, and certainly the reason I was really interested is because about a third of those were in the BIM and information field. In tunneling, we had all sorts of things, heat exchange technology in special tunnel linings, all sorts of thermal imaging and stress assessments, lots and lots of things. But it was a huge range of innovative ideas. And the key to that really was recognizing that innovation, which from a program management point of view, you think could be a disruptor, because it's kind of from a managing scope, cost and time, you don't like disruption. But actually we found, I think I mentioned in the presentation, that it was hugely positive, and those contractors that performed the best were always those ones that innovated the most. And again, in the tunnelling world, the fitting out within tunnels, the innovation that the contractor and the supply chain came up with was extraordinarily beneficial compared to normal conventional ways of installing things in tunnels. So there's a whole raft of things, but you have to create that environment to encourage innovation.
Mm-hmm. Following the Rail Baltica development timeline, we can see that the project enters the construction phase this year. Raitis, how do you assess the supply chain's preparation to deliver the project according to BIM methodology?
I think it very much depends on two factors. First of all, what do you understand by BIM, and what do you understand, where you are in the supply chain, and what kind of scale of contractor you are. Because first of all, about the BIM, we are now seeing as a client that BIM alone is well, I don't want to use the word nothing, but it's not alone. Let's put it that way. There are many different technologies around it, and following this approach of BIM is one thing. But then if you put it together and have all of the attribute information, integrate into many different asset register softwares, or integrate it in GIS, which is, I think, a very important aspect, then it becomes a different animal. And the same goes for the supply chain. There are very different levels of understanding of BIM, and also knowledge of BIM and practice in BIM. And this is what we see in our contracts at the moment also, that first of all, everyone says that they can do whatever to get to the contract, of course. And then when we start on the real work, then the maturity differs very much. And I think it goes back to the experience, how many previous projects you have had, what kind of practical things you have done, and what is your understanding on how do you want to achieve this. Because as previous speakers also said, one thing is about defining what you want, the other thing is how do you get there. And how do you get there? I think this comes with the knowledge and with the previous experience, and it cannot be taught. You can guide, but you cannot teach that. And design, I think it's one thing that where we are right now, we are heavily into design phase, and we have had like several iterations of different discussions, and it's work in progress all the time. So both parties learn and what we want to achieve and how. Now, if we talk about the next phases, which is construction, this will be very challenging, I think, because typically the construction world, and especially those small contractors, which most likely will do some kind of a subcontracting for a general contractor and so on and so on, they are not so familiar with these technologies, so this will be something new for them. But that is why we are also coming to the market and telling and sort of marketing this approach that we will do this. That's why what we have put all of our documents and strategy and information also publicly available, so that anyone can go, anyone can start learning. So if they want to get involved in our project, they will have to count with these kind of things. They will have to work according to this methodology, and these are our rules. And if you want to play by them, you have to comply with them. So it's about teaching, it's about practice, it's about trying to push the designers and contractors to work with these technologies. And it's not going to be easy, because most of our construction process is still ahead of us, but we are determined to get there. We are setting requirements for contractors, we are setting contractual requirements for that reason. So I hope that our experience will be good, but I'm also sure that it's going to be a lot of work, and it will take a lot of commitment from the designers, from the client, and from all of the supply chain members.
Well, a significant value associated with BIM relates to design and construction phases, but it contributes a substantial value within the project's whole life cycle. Nigel, could you share with us more about the facility management at such a big airport as Heathrow?
Yeah, sure. So I agree. You know, we at Heathrow, we put a lot of focus in the design and build phase, and actually getting our information requirements right, getting them embedded into contracts. Again, I think following a theme that we're kind of talking about here in this discussion. And for me, that's really important that you do that. You've got to get a good flow of data coming into the organisation. But we've always done it with the end in mind. And the end in mind is that operational phase of an asset's life. And that's really where our prize is for getting value. That's where we have an asset that's going to last 30 years with a lot of money being spent to maintain it. So we've always made sure that we're putting our data requirements and our structures in place from an operational point of view. Now, the kind of realisation that we had was, if you take Heathrow, we've got multiple levels of quality of data across our whole airport. We've got some data that is over 40 years old, very poor in particular areas. New projects that have delivered new assets, very good data. But what it causes is quite a kind of mishmash of data sources, and some of the data isn't integrated and connected as it should be. So what we did was, through reporting, is actually look at the quality and completeness of the data across the whole airport. We were getting engineers who have kind of complained that they never can trust the data that they get because it's not in that integrated and connected way, even though we're delivering good quality data. And that impedes their asset management capability to be able to go out and actually respond to a fault, try and locate an asset. And where that data is not connected, we're not kind of producing the value for those guys. And you get a loss in trust in that data. So we've started to go through the quality of all our data, so we can start to pinpoint areas in the business where we need to start to invest in improving it, connecting it, using new technology to start to utilise that data. So we have mobile devices now for our engineers where they can go out and actually find faults. But that all relies on that connected and integrated data. And I think data's coming out as quite a key word in a number of my colleagues here. And I must say it is really important for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to touch on another side and ask about construction companies now. Piotr, I know that you have experience connected with the construction on both sides. Can you give your advice how the contractors, how shall they start building the competences to execute projects in BIM efficiently?
Let me start from this way. The best chance to get the experience is some kind of conference like this one, infraBIM. It's showing how people around the world implementing BIM. We're talking now with the specialist. We should take some experience from that kind of people. We should take that experience from that kind of projects. Spend that time, and at the same time, parallel to that period, we should learn, we should learn and learn our resources to be sure our start, it will be proper.
Mm-hmm. Philip, you have extremely extensive experience connected with the most significant infrastructure projects, advising governments and key investors worldwide. Could you please share your view associated with BIM and what the governments and investors should do to create a relevant BIM strategy?
That's a big question. I'm very interested to listen to writers because, in fact, I think that Rail Baltica started really well because they actually started to set out a strategy as to what they wanted. The writers will know that I was involved in the initial outline strategy for them. So it was the first project I've ever been involved with. The client actually said, we want to do BIM, but we don't want to do BIM because it's the right thing to do or it gives us a good 3D model. They actually said it gives us the right information. How are we going to achieve that? And how are we going to support it? So I think the key to this is actually to understand that BIM is not a set of pieces of software. It is not going out and buying a 3D CAD model. It is not going out and buying a database. It's about a process and actually what information needs to move through that process and how am I going to hold that information and integrate it across my project or my part of the project. So there are so many misunderstandings, I think. You know, people talk about common data environments, and you have to realize that common data environment isn't just one big database. Actually, a common data environment is the process of validating information that you have captured, gathered, created, constructed, and being able to deliver that in such a way that everyone can trust that information. And they can look back and say, why is that information there? And so you actually got to say, it is not just having 3D models. And I listened to what Nigel was saying. It is about the ability to say, I've captured information in a process that is trustworthy, that people can look upon and say, I know exactly where that came from, why it's there, what it's supposed to do, how old it is, how accurate it is, all those sorts of things. So it's about making sure those definitions of what you're trying to achieve are very clear. And I think everything starts to flow from that in the sort of examples that Malcolm was using, where he's saying, well, this is what we want, and now, contractor, innovate on that and develop information for me, but do it in an innovative way. So we're not going to control the advance of technology and the advance of good engineers' brains, but we do know that actually collecting information properly and using it properly is absolutely key to the success of BIM. Okay.
Malcolm, do you implement any organizational changes within the project lasting time? Does it happen that with the entrance of the new technology, you reorganize your work?
Yes, interesting. I mean, all projects go through different phases, and the project delivery organisations, do have to adapt and change to suit. And following on that thread from Phil, projects go through these changes as they're making new decisions. It's all about decision making in the early stages for planning and what you can do and the rest of it, and then designing into operation maintenance. And we used to say you're only creating data and information for two reasons. One, because you're legally required to, or two, because at some point in time you're going to have to make a decision with it. And that can either be in building it or in operation and maintenance. And if you do, because you're not creating information just for the sake of it. And so organizations do have to change and flex to suit that. In Crossrail, we went through 5 major changes during the planning to delivery stages, and they were completely and utterly planned for, because as you go through from design, construction, testing, commissioning, and then integration back into a wider in perpetuity operation and maintenance state. So you do need to change the way in which you're organized to make those phases happen. And I think when it comes to thinking about new technologies, the technologies are normally coming in to improving either efficiencies or effectiveness of the way we do things, in the way we create our deliverables or the processes that we work. So they're often changing more about how we're doing things, not so much changing the deliverables that we actually wanted. So the tech developments, they do often require local changes, but not necessarily strategic. As we took the 3D model out into sites to use the model as a 4D tool for managing progress on tablets on site. That allowed us to actually reduce the personnel required and made significant cost savings in terms of people costs and improved efficiencies in being able to make decisions about, to come to an agreement with what had been installed and paying a contractor quickly. So these technologies do change things locally, perhaps more so than strategically, and that was our experience.
Mm-hmm. Redis, can you identify the greatest challenge and the most significant benefits in using BIM on Rail Baltica?
I don't know. And the reason I'm saying is that I believe that we haven't seen them yet. All right. Because we have went through in our journey a lot of challenges, and the great benefit, what we see, of course, is what we aim for at the end is the infrastructure management and the maintenance phase. So this is the benefit we see, and this is how we justify what we are doing now during the design and later throughout the construction. But talking about challenges, I can name a couple. I think one of the biggest challenges, I can't say that it is the greatest, but it's definitely people and people changing their mindset and trusting and delivering the information and trusting this way of information and seeing and believing the information. So I think that the one of the keys is people. So you have to have people who are willing to commit. You have to continue to work on it, and as a client, from client side, you have to be ready to heavily engage with the designers, with the supply chain. It doesn't matter what kind of supply chain member it is, but you have to be ready to engage with them. You have to be ready to learn, and you have to be ready to teach them, because as a client, if you commit to something like this, you have to go all in, and you have to continue to work, and you have to teach people internally, and you have to teach people externally, and this is one of the challenges. Of course, there are technical challenges. There are information, how it is delivered, and there are technicalities about accessing information, sharing information, working in silos and stuff like that. But I believe that can be solved if you have the right people, if you commit to that, and if you are willing to pursue that journey. But that takes a lot of commitment, and the client or the whoever is involved, you have to commit, and you have to follow through what is being delivered, what is being reviewed, so it changes a lot of things, and people have to understand that and have to trust that this is valuable information. So I think these are the main aspects and main things what we have learned so far. But as I said, probably we haven't seen it all yet. Mm-hmm. So a lot of challenges ahead of us.
Okay. Lesson learned, Phil. In your presentation, you also spoke about pitfalls connected with digitalization and BIM. Can you say more about it?
Yes, I think before I do, I just want to say that one of the key parts of this conversation, this is all about information, and actually we have to realize the value of information. And actually, you know, that value is an asset. It's really important. But as far as my presentation was concerned, and the biggest pitfall I've seen is actually people not asking for what they not knowing what they want, and not asking for what they want. So I've seen so many BIM projects where the client just goes, "I want BIM," and the designer goes, "Well, what does that mean?" And well, I want BIM because everyone tells me I want BIM. Well, they go, well, we'll do some clash detection for you. We'll make sure there are no clashes, which is, you know, it's a benefit. There's no doubt about that. But actually, all you're going to get is a coordinated design that has less clashes, and that might be it. So I absolutely think that the biggest pitfall I've seen is people not asking for what they want, whether they be the client, when I think actually the client doesn't realize how valuable that information is. I think that's beginning to be seen, and the world of asset management is beginning to come on board to see that, and that BIM is integrated. But actually, even down to between two parties in design, you know, what information do you need to do your structural design? What information do you need to make the construction? And there are things that happen. I think Malcolm will know this. You know, you think, well, the programming of construction is not integrated, therefore it's a different team that actually works on the program for construction. Actually, you're constructing the same asset that you're collecting information about. It's all the same thing, and so we're actually beginning to have to iron out the differences between those worlds of project control and project management and project delivery and asset delivery and project decisions and money. And not to actually let those islands occur within the project. So that's a pitfall I will keep reinforcing. Ask for what you want, and then make sure it's delivered and put it in the contract. And I have to say that, you know, I've been involved in the ISO 19650 stuff for, I don't know, too many years now, probably 9 years. That process embedded in the 19650, it's actually got some really good stuff to actually say, to answer those questions.
Oh, thank you. We'll remember. Piotr again. I would like to refer to your history connected with your work in the UK and the Central Europe. We all know that the markets are different. Do you have some conclusions when comparing these two words that you are connecting? How do you assess digitalization in the regions of infrastructure here?
Today on my presentation we could see a picture which is showing where's BIM in Europe at the moment. And we saw clearly majority of Europe accepted that BIM strategy. Digitalization that's only one way for Europe. So if we're talking about conclusion, very simple. Let's take some good practice, the best practice from the world, and implement. That's the recipe for the success.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very short. But it wasn't my last question today. But unfortunately we have to go to the end of this discussion, and we have also some questions from the audience for participants on the chat box, and not so many. The first question is, what are your recommendations for civil engineering students from Europe? Who is going to answer for the question? What are your recommendations for civil engineering students from Europe?
I can take part of that. I mean, I teach the Masters in Civil Engineering at the University of Surrey and try to teach it from first principles rather than just say go off and use a piece of BIM software. So I think that that students do need to understand the integration of information across what they're going to work on. And I found, I've been teaching it for 3 years now, that actually there's a massive amount of interest in the students. I mean, I get, of the master's courses, I get the lion's share of those students in their voluntary selection of subjects. So I think it's got to become fundamental in part of the training of civil engineering students.
Mm, okay. Well, the second question is, of course, Nigel. Not Nigel.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, can I just add to that? I do a lecture at a BIM class in Reading University once a year. There's a module there, and I feel that there's great value in sharing the kind of industry experience, because a lot of these courses are very structured either around some of the technology or the tools or a particular part of the life cycle. And I think it is very important for clients to be really involved with students, because then it puts some reality into it.
Yeah, I try to involve. Sorry, go on, Malcolm.
Malcolm.
Oh no, I just wanted to chip in as a civil engineer by training and all the rest of it. One of the things that I certainly would encourage civil engineers to do is to actually apply those engineering principles that you learn to data and information. Don't just don't just think that this is simple commodity stuff that you can simply follow old-fashioned processes. We try to think in early days certainly to get people to think about information engineering, just as in the same way you can be a civil engineer or structural engineer, information engineering, so you can work out the best ways, the most efficient and effective ways of doing things. So the processes that civil engineers go through in their education and the like can absolutely be applied to managing data and information. Just in the same way as you organise and manage, you can teach management to civil engineers, you should be teaching information processes to engineers as part of their courses, because it's about data and information management, because that underpins the way in which people will be working.
And by the way, engineers are very good at it. The engineering students are very good at it.
Yeah,
I've got just a suggestion for Polish market, for Polish students. On the Polish market, we've got very good studies organized by ECC BIM. So why we can't go there and get some proper knowledge?
Okay, shall we go to the second question? Okay. The second question is connected with structural health monitoring. I don't know who of you is familiar with that. What is the usage of sensors, SHM, I mean, in the objects that you maintain? Are they any integrated in the BIM model? Any sensors integrated in BIM model? Who is familiar with SHM?
I'm not familiar with SHM, but I am familiar with remote condition monitoring, which I imagine is Pamela. Yeah. So yeah, I think if we break it down as we've talked about today, you've basically got BIM for design. And there are advantages. There's BIM for construction and BIM for ops and maintenance. And as Rytis said earlier, it's all about behaviours and culture and processes, and then enabling technology is about 10%. So first of all, we need to define what we need to measure. And then we define, and this is what really the digital twin value is it takes the BIM information, and when we start looking at it from an operational perspective, embedding the sensor technology and the sensor data, it goes into the digital twin. I wouldn't have really used the language of putting it into the BIM model, but it's just another data stream. It's another feed of data to tell you how your asset is actually performing. And there are some good examples of that working now. We've seen it during construction, where we can look at sensors embedded into the concrete to test for curing and things like that. But operationally, looking at critical rail temperatures and optimizing the schedule accordingly. So there are some growing use cases of remote condition monitoring, but I see it more as an ops. In the ops space of simulation and monitoring.
Malcolm, you used quite a lot, didn't you?
Well, yes. I mean, I think it's I think it's exactly as Simon is saying, that it's the structural health monitoring and like. You can include all of that in different stages of your sort of project delivery, and particularly, I think when the question might be referring to the types of health monitoring that I think Jacob showed in his presentation about monitoring cracks in bridges and things like that. And so, yes, it's just part of the structural health monitoring is just part of that process. And like Simon was talking there, you know, you shouldn't just think of it as, you know, monitoring concrete. From a rail point of view, you can monitor the performance of the track and whether it's, you know, moving, twisting, the embankments, the, you know, retaining walls, ground, embankments, behavior, all sorts of things that you can capture, this type of information. But it is the process now realizing that it's giving you asset data real time, whereas conventionally, before we had remote condition monitoring, you just had people going out doing inspection reports and like. This is now in the world of 24-hour days, feeding in of data, and you need to have the appropriate management systems in place to be able to sift and sort that, because you're talking about large amounts of data, and you just got to be recognizing that it's just new information that helps you make better decisions about how is my infrastructure performing. Exactly. So it needs to be in the right place.
We've got just a third question. I think that will be the last one because time is running. BIM in theory and BIM in practice. Can you share with us what are the key differences?
Yeah, I suppose I can go into a bit of that. So as SPI, as Specialist Project Integration, we specialise in delivery. So we typically form part of the project leadership team, and we're defining the requirements and the processes, and we're selecting the technologies and managing the projects. And whereas at Phil's side and the BIM Institute is focusing on strategic consulting. So that sits above us. So the theory side it's not just theory, but it's about education. And as Phil said earlier, it's easy to say that you need to know what you want, but how many of us really know what we want? So you can only build on experience from that. So I think it's about having access to the right experience to inform you of understanding what outcome are you trying to achieve, or what have your peers done in other areas. And then the BIM in practice, it does break down to the design level and the construction level and ops and maintenance. And asset management are coming to the party, but they're not leading the initiative. And we see that in most infrastructure projects at the moment, that it's project driven and then it's handed over, whereas it really should be ops led, and capital projects should follow the process.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was the last question. Time is running fast, and we've reached the end of our panel. Many thanks to all of our experts for the discussion and answers and questions. It was an honor for me to host you on the infraBIM in Poland. Stay with us because together with Sylvia, we'd like to sum up the entire smart infrastructure session. Welcome back, Sylvia. Hello. Thank you for joining me for summarizing this session.
It was exciting to hear from our distinguished guests and to learn more about innovative solutions used in infrastructure projects. We could compare the status of BIM implementation in the region. We could hear from the most experienced investors about their findings from the projects, about the advantages, about the challenges. Additionally, we could see the process from the perspective of strategy advisors, from technology providers, from industry association, from standardization body, and BIM in practice masters.
We all came to the conclusion that digital technologies could improve the delivery of the infrastructure process. In the pandemic environment, we can all observe the importance of digitalization and how it helps everyday life. The same refers to infrastructure stakeholders. The good news is that more and more countries decide to unify the project environment and facilitate the infrastructure digitalization, obliging investors to use BIM methodology.
It was the first international event on BIM and digital solutions organized by the Department for International Trade and SPI. We would like to continue this discussion and to create cross-region information exchange platform. Hopefully, the next activities will be organized in a traditional way.
I hope so. I hope so. We are happy to stay in touch with you and share expertise from the largest and most complex infrastructure projects you've heard. If you need more information, please contact us directly. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a good day. Enjoy the remaining part of the infraBIM event. Good luck. After a short break, 2:30, we start the workshop sessions. See you then.
See you. Bye-bye.